All right. Thanks for joining in, everybody. Today, Patrick and I, a couple local plebs here, sit down with Brandon. We're going to probably give you a few minutes to introduce yourself because Patrick and I don't really know a lot about you other than you host a pod called the State of Bitcoin podcast, and um, you have some sort of company, Green Candle. Is it Green Candle IT?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I couldn't get the Twitter handle of just Green Candle, so I had
Oh,
something else at the end. Um,
gotcha.
I was thinking maybe I don't know. The full name of the LLC is Green Candle Investments, so I was gonna put something like maybe Green Candle Invest or something like that, but it was too long, so I just shortened it to
Shorten it down.
yeah. But yeah, I'm Brandon. I run Green Candle. So I do, yeah, like you said, State of Bitcoin podcast that comes out once a week, every Friday audio, Thursday I usually live stream, and then I do macro stuff that I talk to a lot of the FinTwit people that hate Bitcoin.
Haha, nice.
I like to get their perspective just on like the overall macro environment, that kind of stuff. So that other podcast is called Macro Insights, both available on my YouTube and Fountain and wherever you get podcasts and things like that. So, and then I do Twitter Spaces as well. So I do,
Oh,
a lot of, I try to do a lot of interactive stuff with people. So, yeah, DMs are open or whatever. So if anybody wants to reach out or anything, feel free.
yeah, sweet. I also want to just chime in right here too because we have a meetup here and we're all trying to get more involved because in my estimation we don't have enough of podcasts and stuff. We could have just because this is the way we get the word out and this is the way we create new ideas and we connect and we build this human network. So if anybody wants to reach out to any of us here at the Reading Bitcoin Center as well, or myself personally, and want to even talk, shoot us a DM because we're always down to do that. Patrick, do you want to interject anything right now?
No, I'm just wondering what your other Twitter handle is there, Brandon. I found the Green Candle IT. Where else can we reach out to you?
Yeah, so I just have my personal Twitter too. It's just bkeys1010. So yeah, that's where Lauren Hoddle hit me up on that one. But normally I'm just kind of shit posting on that one, to be honest. So
Love it.
I'm not
Yeah.
really tweeting too much about Bitcoin or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I tweet about, Bitcoin and kind of the macro stuff on the Green Candle stuff.
Okay,
And then maybe I just tweet about like personal things that I like, maybe sports or music, maybe some Bitcoin stuff here or there too. I'm of course I'm interested in that, so I post a little bit of everything on my personal one, but I'm not quite as active on that one. I go through
gotcha.
spurts. I go through spurts definitely where I'm
Yeah.
like, I
I
maybe I
I
feel
hear
like
you, man.
posting a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, that's I've definitely if you go through the history of my tweets, it's ugly. The further back you go, the uglier it gets. So I've tried to tone it down a little bit since then. But so investments, do you manage other people's money? So you're just dealing with your own investments? How are you, I mean, without getting crazy into detail and whatnot, but shoot us with as much information as you're comfortable telling us about investments and the way you see things going and what you're heavy in and bloody bloody blah. Go ahead and
Yeah, I mean, I guess
let
I
us
could
know.
kind of start from the beginning, just kind of like the reason I started Green Candle. So, I was I ran track at the University of Memphis, 2012, 2016-ish time.
Oh wow.
I had a group of teammates that, we were all kind of graduating a year or so after. Coincidentally, like 90% of my teammates on the cross country and track team went to grad school.
Hmm.
So we all kind of kept in touch, but we scattered around the country. And so what I was doing was, while I was TAing and doing all this stuff, I would go and drive Uber. And in between picking up people, I would listen to podcasts. And so one of those was We Study Billionaires, Preston Pish.
Hmm.
This was pre, him having a Bitcoin show or anything like that. Then I was listening to some other one. I think it was called like Millennial Money or something. I don't really listen to it anymore, but it was more of like just a personal finance podcast.
Hmm.
And coincidentally, they both brought up Bitcoin within like a week of each other of episodes. And so I'm like, okay, I need to start looking into this, because I've always been fascinated with, all right, I saw my parents were self-employed. They run their own business, but they had problems that 2008 hit them pretty hard or anything like
Mhm.
that. So my always thought with all of this was, if I get lucky enough to make a enough amount of money, I need to figure out a way how to make that grow and make myself be able to keep it long term. So I started using like one of these robo advisors called Acorns. I don't use it anymore, but essentially what the premise is, they have like roundup. So you spend $9.75.
Oh, right.
They round it up to $10, charge you there, then they invest that 25% or 25 cents for you. So that's kind of how I got started. And then I opened a Robinhood account and started buying and trading Bitcoin at the time,
Yep.
trading it because I was like, I make like 100, $200 driving Uber on a Friday night. And then I go out the next Saturday night and I spend half of it on beer and whatnot. So then I would be like, all right, this next of it, I need to make this go a little bit farther so I don't have to keep driving Uber.
Yeah.
So I was trading Bitcoin and Dogecoin. I know, obviously, it was shitcoining at the time, but I didn't really know what
Guilty.
was going on. Yeah. So I was learning about that, and I was telling my former teammates all about it, and nobody really took to it except for who I started this with, my buddy Dan.
Mm.
And so I was, just kind of telling him like, look, man, the more we look into it, the more I realize like, our former teammates don't really have any interest in it, but there is a lot of people that are, and that maybe don't have like a friend like you or I that are interested in it. So we should just start putting content out there, and it'll help us learn more as we go along. So I started writing a newsletter about 2 years ago, 2020 time, when the world was like shut down. COVID broke out, and I was kind of doing my own personal investments. And then, now I was trapped at home. I was a forensic engineer at the time. So I was driving around the state of Florida doing a lot of different tasks and things like that. But now all of a sudden I don't have to go into the office. I'm at home in my apartment, and I have a lot of the 2 hours that I was using to commute. I'm now just sitting at home. So I'm like going stir crazy, need to start something. So I started Green Candle, and then I realized like I really love it. So I, just kind of dove into it. I got a job where I was able to work a little bit remote, work on it full time, or not full time, but kind of double dip a little bit here or there, not have to go into the office. And then my buddy Dan was also, working. He got a job in Bitcoin space. I'm not gonna dox what company or anything like that, but he was unable to kind of keep doing this content stuff with me because of that.
Oh, nice.
But I enjoyed it, so I was like, I'll keep doing it. So I've kind of kept doing this for myself now for about a year and a half. I started the podcast a little bit after the newsletter. I was a little, I guess, gun shy when it comes to getting behind the camera. And I don't really understand why I kind of had that blocker, but I think I'm better behind the camera than I am writer, to be honest, just kind of looking at myself in the mirror. But yeah, so I kind of started doing all that. And, with that, obviously I found Bitcoin, and I, fully orange pilled and things like that. But, I'm a little different, I guess, in a lot of the maxis, where I do kind of believe that there maybe is some space for some diversification in your portfolio. Obviously I think Bitcoin could be like a good savings technology and things like that. But there's a lot of other things and a lot of other smart people that I talk to where, I eventually kind of want to go to Green Candle like full time, and I don't want to have to sell any of my Bitcoin. So I need to find another place to make income, whether it's dividend investing in stocks or real estate or something along those lines. So
Right.
I've kind of looked into other avenues, but I have I also put into Bitcoin too. So what I'm kind of trying to focus on now is maybe do the Green Candle stuff and earn a little bit more Bitcoin, and then use my salary to do the other investments. So I kind of I'm still accumulating Bitcoin, but I'm doing that through Green Candle stuff. So kind of a long-winded story of what I'm doing and kind of all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to dive in full macro views, Bitcoin views, all that kind of jazz.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time. Before we do that, we won't tell anybody if you dox your friend Dan. No, you don't have to, but
I can't do
yeah,
it. I would. I mean, I guess if people search hard enough, they probably could find it. I don't
yeah.
know, but
Well,
you
let's take a couple bunny trails first,
So
and then we'll dive into some macro stuff. What does Bitcoin mean to you?
Bitcoin's freedom, man. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, it's just owning your stuff.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, I mean, you know, I think whether it's I think the first thing that kind of opened my mind is maybe to the world isn't, you know, plural, or like, I guess, black and white, is
Hmm.
maybe going back to sports, right? So I mean, there's like a certain situation where it was you know, I was running track and cross country in college, and you know, there was this one race. They're like, hey, you know, top 8 at this race goes to the next you know, the next qualifier. And that was just on our personal team, right? So I mean, I was you know, sophomore at the time. I was on scholarship, but I wasn't one of the top guys when it came to cross country. I ended up having a really good race this time, and one of the freshmen that came in, who was supposed to be a hotshot freshman, shit the bed. And so the coach decided to take him instead of me. So I kind of realized, like, at that point, like, look, like, you kind of have to look out for yourself when it comes to a
Hmm.
lot of things. Like, no matter how many, you know, people kind of tell you that they're there for you and other things like that, you know, at the end of the day, everybody's kind of looking out for themselves too. And I kind of realized that too when I went to my first job, right? I mean, they work you really hard. They tell you, like, hey, you keep working hard, you're going to keep moving up, you're going to keep getting all this, you know, a lot more money, all this and that. And then, you know, at the end of the day, when the year review comes around, you get a 3% raise. And, you know, that's, yeah, I guess, like $50 a paycheck. You know, you realize, like, hey, this raise working at this company for a long time isn't really doing you much. So, you know, what Bitcoin really did for me was kind of open my eyes to, like, one, the fiat system is just, you know, it's taking your time away from you, making you work very hard and get paid not as much as you probably deserve. And, you know, obviously that's business at the end of the day. Like, if a company's not making money off of you, they're probably going to let you go. But, you know, I was seeing a bunch of people around me. You know, like I said, I went to graduate school, I got a master's degree, and I'm still kind of like not, you know, able to live like super comfortably, I guess.
Hmm.
And then, you know, I saw a bunch of friends doing the same thing. And then, you know, the side hustle culture became super big, where,
Yep.
you know, I don't mind working hard or doing anything like that. But it was like, hey, if I want to go out this week, or if I want to go, you know, have a drink with my friends, or go to a happy hour with work after work with my coworkers, I need to drive Uber, or, you know, deliver groceries, or do something like that once a week. And that just, you know, didn't really sit well with me with that. So,
Yep.
you know, it kind of just made me dive into, you know, Bitcoin as a whole, and just realize, like, hey, you know, this whole fiat system is really messed up. You know, it's depreciating significantly at a rate that, you know, especially since 2020, you know, that is just, it's insane. And so the amount of inflation and everything else going on just kind of made me realize that you need to find a way that to kind of detach yourself from government and other people, and, you know, kind of having that dependency on, you know, whether it's you know, a job, or, you know, government, or some sort of regulation. You need to find a way to kind of escape that. And for me, Bitcoin is that escape of, you know, the clown world, essentially. You know, the meme that goes around Bitcoin Twitter, because
Oh yeah.
you can stay in that rat race as long as you want, but until you open your eyes to, you know, what is really going on, you know, you're just kind of stuck. And that's what really Bitcoin did for me.
So it sounds like you initially got into Bitcoin and with day trading and number go up, kind of trying to make some money, and now you're talking philosophically, Bitcoin is freedom. How long did it take for you to make that shift from this is a great way to make money to, oh wow, this is a whole lot more than that? Or was there a specific event that happened, or just kind of gradually as you started doing your research and looking into it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, when I first, like I said, when I first got into it, I was driving Uber, and I was like trying to trade it, essentially, right? And at the time, I knew, you know, it was like 2016, 17 time. I knew, you know, a lot of people made money at buying this and doing something with it. So I knew that. I didn't really understand the technology or anything. That's kind of where the shit coining came in. So I was like, all right, I'll find the next Bitcoin. And I read some article that said it was Dogecoin. I made a lot of money on it. And then I like got it completely out of it because I didn't know what the hell was going on. But it was kind of like in that situation where, you know, it was probably, I guess, more in like the 2020 time, because I'm not to age myself or anything, but I'm 28. So, the world hadn't kicked me in the mouth really just yet. Come 2020, so 3-ish years ago. I was, like I said, I was working a job and doing all this stuff, and I was trying to figure out like, hey, how am I going to make more money and all this stuff? And then I see the Fed just, print a ton of money and
Yep.
like kind of like lose the control of all of this. So it made me really dive into more of like the monetary policy of things. And it was that, and then seeing Robinhood and like some of these other brokerage firms just kind of like halt trading on stocks, because it was just one of those things where hey, stocks are supposed to be this vehicle for the common man. Robinhood's supposed to help. I mean, that's in the name of the app, right? Robinhood help the poor people or the smaller retail investors kind of get up and find a way out. And now they're halting something that theoretically, like, it was propped up by a lot of retail. So that event just kind of made me realize like, hey, like, if I'm going to do this whole Bitcoin thing and kind of get into it, like I need to understand like the full principles behind it, like cold storage. I need to figure out how to do that. I need to figure out how to get it all off on the exchange and do all that kind of stuff. And just, as soon as that opportunity kind of, presented, or I guess not opportunity, but as soon as that event kind of occurred, I was like, all right, like there's really like the system is built to keep the little guy down. And they can all say, play the game, whatever, invest, buy real estate, do whatever, but at the end of the day, the system is designed to make the smaller guys, the guys middle class, lower middle class, it's going to be harder for them to become the upper middle class or the upper class as time goes on. So that's where it kind of hit me, I guess, was when I saw kind of I guess the control aspect of the SEC and kind of the people overlooking things, just kind of, I guess, pulling those strings.
So once you had gotten into Bitcoin, you started paying attention to some of those things and connecting the dots then, right?
Yeah, I would say like, when I was first trading it, I wasn't really paying attention to all those things. I was still in school, right? So I wasn't really, I guess, figuring it out too much. But then once I graduated, I started paying attention a little bit more. Like I said, my first job involved a lot of driving. So I was listening to podcasts like crazy. Like I would, I'm in Tampa. I would drive to Jacksonville like once a week. That's 3 hours there, 3 hours back at the very least. You can only listen to the same playlist for so many times before you get bored of it. So I was just consuming a bunch of information, and that's just what, where I kind of, I guess, started down the rabbit hole. It was, a lot of different podcasts, and I like to view a lot of, or listen to a lot of different perspectives. So, I've never been one to kind of, I guess, get hooked on a specific podcast and listen to that like super religiously. But I also like to, hear people that have the other argument, hating on Bitcoin, and maybe hear something about some other, shitcoin, why they think that's going to work and why Bitcoin is going to fail. And then, I like to kind of do that old like mental model, I guess, for myself to poke holes in their arguments. And it just kind of helps me dive into mine a little bit more. And
I think
that's, kind of what
that's
happened.
a great strategy. We expect people that don't see eye to eye to, with us on Bitcoin to be open-minded. And I definitely really appreciate people who are open-minded to listen to all the arguments before they, make up their mind about anything. Because really, inevitably, life is about choices and about probabilities. That's one of the reasons I think I like Foss a lot, is because, he's basically, as a risk manager, he's just trying to bet on the future, and he's trying to go, okay, the probability of this happening is not zero, but we're going to, invest accordingly. So if this thing happens, I've covered my ass here. If this thing happens, I'm going to benefit greatly. A lot of the times when we put all of our eggs in one basket, it backfires on us. So I definitely really like to hear all the perspectives out there, because you can actually glean truth nuggets out of the opposite side. I mean, believe it or not, Peter Schiff has a lot of really amazing things to say, and he's really right on the money on a lot of stuff. but maybe his escape vehicle isn't up to code. So I really appreciate that. I was gonna mention another thing, which is the Robinhood thing that cracks me up, because when I got a tax statement from Robinhood at the end of one of the years, I about shit myself because I didn't realize how much shit coining I had been doing, because I was popping in and out of different things. And at the end of the year, I got my tax information, and I was horrified because that was about the time I started, getting out of the shitcoin biz too. Don't feel bad, because I think the vast majority of people that I've talked to went through the whole shitcoin. It was just part of the journey, So to me, that's just part of the trip. So, did you a lot of like the macro guys, even in this space, were running to cash and keep, dry powder was a popular term going around for a long time. Did you do that anticipating dips, or anticipating, like right now I'm still thinking maybe we are, I don't think the biggest glomp of shit has hit the fan yet, so to speak, because look at these interest rates that have went from 2.2 to like damn near 7 on a 30-year mortgage in like less than a year. It's insanity. Like that it takes a while for that impact to hit the economy. I don't think we've fully seen any of this stuff really hit yet. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. So I agree with you 100%. So I mean, if you just kind of like listen to what Powell has said, he said expect more pain. He expects the unemployment numbers to go up. I know we're seeing a lot of tech layoffs, but tech only accounts for, I think, like maybe 5% or even less of the entire workforce. So seeing those giant numbers, thousands of jobs at Google, Meta, all these places, people getting laid off, they're actually getting a pretty good turnaround. They're highly skilled workers that are like data engineers, all that kind of stuff, people that can find jobs in other places, and it's seemingly that they're finding other jobs in a quick turnaround. So I do think that there's going to be more pain in the market, but I'm not really one to try to time it. I guess that has always kind of, I guess, stressed me out when I'm trying to do that. So my strategy with Bitcoin is the DCA, and then with the stock market and other things, it's just to put in some with every paycheck. But yeah, I mean, right now I'm kind of my strategy. So I'm sitting in a duplex right now. I bought it, September 2020. I live in part of it, and then I Airbnb the other part. So I'm actually looking into potentially, buying another home here in like the next quarter or two, to try to grow that portfolio just to get the cash flow. That's something that I do like. I know, it is kind of popular in the Bitcoin space to say real estate is a shit coin and all that kind of stuff, but there's very few, I guess, vehicles that allow you to use just basically, a bunch of debt at, a relatively low interest rate, and essentially have somebody pay it down for you with whether it's renting or Airbnb or whatnot. So that's kind of like, I guess, my own personal strategy right now. And the way I kind of see things going is, Jerome Powell is going to keep and the Fed is going to keep increasing rates throughout the rest of the year. I bet that they, do just kind of continue these 25 basis point hikes. Maybe they skip one meeting or something like that, but they'll kind of continue doing that throughout the rest of the year. And then, 2024, coincidentally, around election time, that's probably when they'll start peeling it back. And, maybe the stock market or something will start ripping. But I think, as far as like the market goes, I don't know if we've seen a bottom yet. I think, one of the positives, if you want to look at Bitcoin price, which, I'm not like a huge fan of looking at it all the time. When I first kind of got into it, I was obsessed, but now I kind of just don't really try to pay attention too much of it. But I think, Bitcoin price, last time I checked, we were around 25-ish thousand. I think, the one positive is we're seeing like some growth stocks kind of take off in this beginning of the year. And some like really get hammered, whether it's like, the ones when they're announcing layoffs, like, Google and others. But Bitcoin's kind of held steady and actually kind of steadily increased. So I don't think we're quite like decoupled from the quote unquote risk on assets, as the fin Twitters like to call it.
Right.
But I think, we're going to get there. and I think this next couple years is going to be pretty interesting, just from, an overall macro environment involving Bitcoin, because I don't think people realize like how much the macro events line up with the halvings. And so, obviously we only have like about 10% left to be mined. And I don't think the halvings are going to really be controlling the price too much anymore. It's going to be more of like the hodlers, people exchanging, that kind of stuff. So, I think it's going to be really, like I said, be really interesting with these next couple years with these macro events. And, I hope for a lot of the Bitcoin companies, it becomes a little easier and those macro events do loosen up, because I think unfortunately Bitcoin has kind of, especially the companies, have had some struggles on the side due to, a lot of struggles in the crypto market and people kind of joining together the Bitcoin and crypto market. And so, I hope as things kind of rolled on, more of, I've seen some CNBC reporters and other things kind of be able to differentiate that. But I still think from like the general public, we're still a long ways away from being able to, go through that full education of the differences of that. But yeah, circling back to the macro, I think like we'll probably have somewhat of a quote unquote melt up for the next maybe quarter, Q2, Q3-ish. And then I think, maybe that's when we'll start to see, some pain in the market towards the end of the year. And then come 2024 time, that's when maybe the Fed's going to have to make a decision if they want pain for a little bit longer, or if they're just going to, take the foot off the gas.
You timed your buy of your duplex at just an amazing time, huh? Because I mean, weren't you guys? Everybody was going, screw it, we're gonna bug out and go to Florida. We're gonna leave communist California and New York, and get the hell out of here.
I definitely got lucky. I mean, people try to say, they try to time it or whatever, but at the time, so I always kind of had this idea, like I said, I listened to a bunch of podcasts. So I was listening to a lot of real estate ones. And this is a strategy called house hacking for those who don't know. Essentially, you can use an FHA loan, which is 3.5% down, and buy anything from 1 single family to 4 units. So at the time, personal story here, but I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment, right? COVID broke out. And my girlfriend at the time quit her job because they transferred her to New Jersey and decided to move in with me late February. So while she was looking for jobs, COVID broke out. So a bunch of people were getting laid off and she couldn't find one. And then she got a job, and it was at like a call center or something like that. So she was on the phone all the time, and I was in meetings, and I was in a 1-bedroom apartment. So we didn't really have it was like 600 square feet. So we didn't really have too much room to, set up a desk or anything like that, or kind of have separate conversations. So it was annoying in that aspect. And I knew I was kind of wanted to do this. So I started looking in July time. I got this, I found this duplex, and then it went under contract for somebody else. So I was like, okay, I'll keep looking. And I kept looking. I didn't find anything I really liked. And then this one came back on the market. Coincidentally, I guess the person before was going to do the same thing, FHA loan, but their financing fell through a week before closing date. So I was in actually like not a bidding war, but kind of with another buyer. We both offered the same thing. I wasn't going any farther up, and he wasn't either. But he offered a conventional loan, and I offered FHA. And somehow, some way, I kind of just was in the right spot, right time. Met the seller of the home. And he liked me. So he said, we've already gone through this FHA process, which is a little bit more stringent than the conventional. So, we're confident it's all going to pass. I like you, so I'll sell you the home. So it ended up working out really well. But, as things work out really well, they also, can go bad really quickly. Which is
I know where this is going.
So I'm sitting in my duplex. Like I said, this is kind of what I call the sunroom, the second story. So, I'm in Florida. We had a tropical storm, and I noticed some water damage. So, I had water damage turned into mold, and then, they put in these humidifiers and all these other kind of things. That blew the AC. Then the AC, I came and fixed that, and then remediation guys said, you know, we're not gonna fix up the drywall and do all that stuff with the mold because your wiring is kind of old, so you need to get the whole upper unit rewired. So I was like, all right, I was lucky to get the home, but then everything kind of fell apart right away, and I was out a lot of money, you know, unexpectedly. You know, very early on. So, you know, as things kind of work out, they also can kind of backfire too. But, you know, with coming with those struggles, I have been very blessed where, you know, the house has appreciated quite a bit.
Nice.
And I'm able to use some of that appreciation to potentially buy the next
The
house.
big question. Do you still have the girlfriend?
I do not.
I was gonna, that's where my money was.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, man. Patrick, sorry, I've been bogarting the microphone here. You have
it's
anything to
been a
interject
great
here?
conversation.
For sure.
Great. So, you're talking about your DCA, your dollar cost averaging. What do you use for that? Is there a do you do that through an exchange or through Swan? What do you do for that?
Strike.
Yep, Strike.
Strike?
Yeah, I use it
Okay.
through Strike. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the easiest way for me that I see right now, and like the cheapest, lowest fees. You know, I mean, there's obviously positives and negatives to all of them. So I mean, I wouldn't recommend like something like a Coinbase or anything like that. Obviously not financial advice, but you know, the one thing I don't really like about Strike is that you know, you can't really it makes it difficult to buy or to, like, I guess, request Bitcoin from somebody. Like I can't send a Lightning invoice.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of more, I guess, it's more based towards, I guess, fiat transferring and then just buying Bitcoin on the exchange and putting in cold storage. It's not really, I guess, useful for, you know, maybe buying, selling, kind of that stuff. I mean, I guess maybe buying, but you know, sending Bitcoin to somebody or sending a invoice or something like that. So that is my one critique on that app. But you know, there's a lot of great products. I'm sure Swan's great too. I just never, I don't know, for some reason I feel like there are a lot of West Coast people on Swan, and I just never really interacted with them too much.
Yeah, I went to the Pacific Bitcoin conference and it was just a Swan Fest, which it's great. I met a guy who, Patrick, if you listen to the last person that I talked to, Todd Taylor, he actually using Strike. Was it Strike? I use Strike. He DCA'd every hour of every day last year. So that's a pretty cool accomplishment. So I made it maybe half the year, but as soon as I talked to him at the conference in November, I was like, all right, I'm back in again. So since then, I've been DCAing every hour also, and not a large amount, but I also tweak the amount based upon where I think, you know, if the Bitcoin price is super low. But I'm right about the point where I did save some, you know, I have some dry powder and I'm looking to do some mash, just, you know, buys and shove my chips in the middle of the table too. So I am trying to time, but I'm also DCAing, and I also bought Bitcoin in, you know, 2016 for $900. So I can't really get hurt, but I'm still trying to play all the angles, you know, because this is also a probability.
That's also just who you are as well.
That's true too.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
part of your
for
personality.
Sure. Gambler.
Hey, aren't we all though a little bit?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think, you know, in order to stomach or get into Bitcoin, you have to be like curious about it in general.
For sure.
I think what brings in most people definitely is like the number go up, at least from my experience.
Yep, me too.
And, you know, at the end of the day, that's kind of a sense of gambling. I mean, so stock market is supposedly a regulated gamble at some aspects, but you know, Bitcoin's a little bit more, I guess, you know, putting your balls on the table kind of thing, you know? And I mean, it is interesting kind of how the Bitcoin space has shifted, it seems like, where, you know, Bitcoin, you know, kind of historically got its start like on the Silk Road and kind of, you know, using it for, you know, the back end stuff and Satoshi's dice, gambling, like that kind of stuff. And then now, you know, everybody on Bitcoin Twitter is like carnivore diet and working out and doing all these things.
It's a cult.
Yeah. It's kind of shifted from like, all right, use it for all your vices to now like, hey, it's freedom. So,
yeah,
I mean, obviously it's a good shift, but it is kind of funny just kind of looking back and seeing that, especially as you're saying, like, you're a gambler. I think, everybody is kind of one at heart.
Yeah, for sure. I think when we zoom out even farther, I think sometimes us here in the US, we get kind of egocentric and just don't realize that Bitcoin is a global phenomenon as well. And we can even zoom out our macroeconomic picture and look at the whole world in there too. And, I've heard a lot of, Bitcoin, at least people I respect in the Bitcoin community, talking about, hey, what really may just send, Bitcoin into another orbit is probably not something that's going to happen here in the United States. It's like I was listening to well, I forgot her name now, but she was talking about getting a bank approved so that they can, because we still live in a fiat world, and so people are still trying to find ways to hop back and forth between the Bitcoin financial network and the traditional fiat financial network. And the talk was like, oh, all about America, 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 America. And it's like, guys, this if we start regulating the hell out of Bitcoin here in the United States, other countries are gonna just pick up the ball and go, thank you, and there's other countries like I always talk about the unbanked, because to me that's Bitcoin has so many use cases, and to me that's a huge one for the betterment of humanity across the world. And we really are lucky to live in America, where we have been banked and we've been eating well, and we're housed well, blah blah blah. But I think that Bitcoin, the trajectory of the other parts of the world that we fail to really look at a lot of the time as Americans, may really kick things off. Like other countries firing up their printing press, and people over there going, oh, hey, we're getting devalued because our government sucks too. We're going to opt into the Bitcoin network. So what are your thoughts on like a macro as far as the world macro goes?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're kind of in this global, economy at a certain aspect. I think, with COVID, that kind of breaking out, we're going to probably shift a little bit to more of like nationalistic societies, maybe. Maybe not with this regime here that we have, in the United States. Maybe if we get a regime shift, I don't know, not to get too politicky, but, I think you're just gonna have to look at like the incentives when it comes to adopting Bitcoin. And, who does it incentivize? It incentivizes the countries that are on the dollar standard and don't get any of the benefit to the inflation that is going on with the US dollar. And that's basically every other country in the world outside of the United States. Europe to a lesser extent, because they have their own, like, a little bit more stable of a currency. But you look at Latin America, obviously we have El Salvador. You look at all the countries in Africa who are suffering and kind of dealing with unstable currencies. You got Argentina, Brazil, some of these other ones that just their currencies and everything else is just severely inflated, and it's causing a massive amounts of issues for those countries. So I think, like, for a Bitcoin adoption, like macro's perspective, I think, like I said, I think more LATAM and African countries are going to adopt this year. We saw Central African Republic adopt it. I just hope, the sake of like leadership when it comes to a lot of these countries, I hope that they kind of like, see what Bukele is doing, see a lot of the positives that he's doing. Whether you like or hate his methods, you can't argue with the results. El Salvador has seen a lot of prosper coming to it. Obviously, if you look at their US dollar kind of paper gains losses, when it's come to Bitcoin, it hasn't been good, and there's no kind of escaping that. But there's alternative effects that happens when you adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, and that's what El Salvador has really seen. So I think Africa's going to start building with Bitcoin. There's a big Bitcoin conference going on in Africa this summer, I believe, and so I think that's just going to kind of continue. I think the incentive for the US to adopt Bitcoin is very low, unless they decide like, hey, I actually had Luke Mikic on my podcast a little bit ago, but his theory is that if the US wanted to weaponize the dollar, they could essentially, I guess my computer wants to talk to me now, but I guess they could essentially
back
the US
Siri.
dollar. Yeah, no, you're good. They can back the US dollar with Bitcoin, and instead of doing it on the gold standard, they could do it like that. And so, will the US do that? I highly doubt it, but
Yeah.
it is something that they could do, and that would be, a big incentive to strengthen up the dollar. And
Well,
so
they could go back to the gold standard as well, right? And that's never going to happen, because
Never.
then that puts them in handcuffs and they can't spend whatever they want, right?
Impossible.
Well, yeah, I think so, but I mean, like gold isn't as easily moved, right? I mean, we all know the differences between gold and Bitcoin, right? I mean, we've gone through the mental exercise at this point with Peter Schiff and all that kind of stuff too. So, but I think when it comes down to it, it'll change the US dollar amount for. I mean, Bitcoin's a little bit more volatile, that kind of stuff. Like gold is, if you look at the gold price over the past 20 years, it hasn't really moved at all. And so the volatility in Bitcoin could actually probably benefit the US dollar, because they would be able to print it a little bit more, that kind of stuff. So if they wanted to have control, they theoretically could do that. I'm not saying they would or they should or whatever. But I'm just trying to look at like where incentives lie.
They
And
should. They
yeah,
should.
and yeah, exactly.
But it's doubtful, because they'll probably do the opposite, because they'll see it as a threat to their control over the purse strings. And my theory is more that the war is just beginning and we're going to see crackdowns, So that's just my opinion. But I definitely agree with what you're saying for sure. But my vote would be that they're going to go the opposite way, and not the right way, not the smart way, because I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think they're going to go the opposite way, but I think if you, like I said, if the U.S. were to wake up and be smart one day, regulators were kind of like do that. I think that would be the smart way to go. But I think it's going to be a little bit of shift of the tide. We're probably going to see the U.S. not become the global world leader in our lifetime. Whether that's 10, 20 years or something, I don't know, or maybe it's quicker.
Right.
You never know, but we'll see some of these now third world countries, quote unquote developing countries, start to rise up and really prosper. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out, but
For sure.
you got to prepare yourself, right, and stack those sats while you can.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think as countries get tired of being Uncle Sam's little bee, they're gonna start trading in other things, whether it be basket of currencies, commodities, whatever, and bypass US dollars. And maybe that'll be the beginning of the end of our ability to push print on our money printer. Who knows? But another thing I was going to ask you was, in these echo chambers of other Bitcoiners, like we say the same things, we kind of know what's going on. And I'm, definitely putting more eggs in that basket, as far as I really think that, I mean, from what I've seen being in this space for many years now, several years, it's almost like I've seen the script beforehand. I'm watching this train wreck in slow motion. We're 99% right from the stuff I was hearing back in 2016 all the way through to now. How do we, and this kind of goes back to you talking about educating people, between the differences of actual Bitcoin and all the other shit coins out there. How do we get this message out? What can we do? I mean, we want to do podcasts. We want to talk. We want to try to, get this message out to our friends and family. What can we do? Like, what are we doing wrong? Because like it seems to me like this should be spreading a lot hotter than it is, a lot faster. What can we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think it's tough right now, because I think, the toxic Bitcoiner is kind of gaining like the popularity, I guess, in the Bitcoin space now, because people are just really, jumping onto that, hating on shitcoiners, all that kind of stuff. I think, if you really want to orange pill something, it takes a level of trust from that person knowing you, that you're not going to scam them, whether that's a friend, family, all that. So it's really knowing that person and then going from there, right? Whether it's somebody who has some sort of financial knowledge, maybe it's somebody who's struggling to buy those groceries. You're like, hey, you just bring up the fact like, hey, your grocery bill was $100 a year ago, it's 200 now. Like, you're kind of talking about that, and then you get into the reasons why, and then then you maybe toss in Bitcoin there. And you're like, what is a solution? And you kind of like play that mental game with them and kind of go through there. I think that's the way to do it, at least in my experience. I've had some people tell me, buy somebody Bitcoin and do that as a gift. I don't think that ever works, because if it goes up or down, they're looking at you and they're like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
Either you're their best friend in the world,
Hmm.
or they hate you.
Right.
At first sign, when it goes on a big dip, they're selling. So I don't really think that method works. I
Mm-mm.
think, it really just takes just like showing them the true issues that are at hand. And I
Yeah.
think, from the average person now, they know something is wrong. They're aware, because they're seeing all the prices go up. They're just not aware of any kind of solution or as to why things are going wrong. So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of like sitting down and just saying like, hey, this is what I've learned doing this. And, it takes time to orange pill somebody. And then, once they finally crack that code, it maybe is like, all right, the eureka moment that we've all kind of had ourselves. It takes them kind of, going there themselves.
For sure. I really have found exactly the same thing to be true, with my own experiences trying to, I don't even like the word orange pill, but trying to explain the network to people and one of the problems, like you said, is like they're writing your convictions and so then you get the blame for it. And it's like, no, they need to develop their own convictions. They need to go educate themselves as to why and what this thing is and what is currently going on in the world. Like, what is money? Like, just start at the basics and educate themselves, and then they'll develop their own set of convictions, and then things like volatility won't matter. It's we always hear the volatility thing. It's like, oh, that's why foreign countries aren't using it and stuff. It's like, well, then just you can still transfer money, you can still use it as remittance, you can still do all these other things. It's just not like we keep mentioning what's going on here in America, and like, hey, our economy is going to shit, blah 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 blah, but there are so many other reasons to have Bitcoin in the equation. um, I'm gonna just totally turn directions here because I know you have a hard stop. So just tell us when you need to go and we'll go, because I'm gonna see if Patrick will hang out for a little bit and maybe the two of us can hash out and kind of go over some of the topics, and then we'll talk about you behind your back when you're gone too. So just go ahead and let us know, and I'll quit bogarting this microphone and let Patrick jump back in here.
Yeah, no, I think the message is getting easier as, like you said, that people are starting to feel the pain from inflation, and having that pain is what's going to drive people to look for solutions for it. If everybody is comfortable, they're not going to look for anything different. They're going to stick with the status quo, right?
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I think, that discussion is getting a little bit, easier now. But I still think there's a long way to go, right? I mean, like Lauren was saying over there, I think, there's a lot of issues outside of the US that people just don't even realize, right? I mean, you bring up the Canadian Truckers Convoy, for example. I had a discussion with a friend about that a week ago. They had no idea that, the government was shutting off bank accounts during that time. They knew that, crypto was getting donated and all that kind of stuff. They didn't know all of it was seized except for, 70% of the Bitcoin that was donated. So, I mean, like they don't really realize a lot of these things. And, seeing that kind of use case to them just really opens their eyes. And then, maybe if they're a little bit of conspiracy person, you can go down the CBDC rabbit hole or
Yeah.
do something like that. I mean, like it really just takes like knowing them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you have to figure out like what I guess resonates with them, because most people they don't want to look at their paycheck. They don't want to look at their bank account. They don't want to know how much they're spending. They just want to know, I have enough money to pay off my bills.
Yep.
And that's that. I want to wipe my hands with it. I don't want to give a shit about any of this stuff.
Yep. 100%.
But, I think that it's just kind of getting easier, but now it's getting to the point where, like I said before, and like you said over there, is that Patrick, that they can't ignore it anymore, right? Because you have to actually start to budget. You actually have to, figure it out. We're getting to that point where it's like, if you don't have a second source of income, people my age are like, what the hell are you doing? What, like, somebody will come up to you at a party, like, what's your side hustle? Like, that's like an opening conversation aspect. And in reality, that's like, if you sit back and think about it, that's so messed up. Like people were able to, at one point in time, just work the 9 to 5, till they're, 55, 60, whatever, and then retire comfortably. And now it's like that retirement age is pushing up. You need more income. You need to do investments. You need to figure out, all these other things. You need to be a day trader on the side. And, it comes with conviction, just knowing what you're putting your money in. And that gets back to the point of, what you were saying, Lauren, is like, if you give them Bitcoin, they're going to sell it, whether it goes up or down or whatever. But it's the same thing in stocks. It's the same thing in real estate. If you don't really know what you're putting your money into, and people are seeing housing crash in 2008, they're like, oh shit, my house went down by so much, I'm going to sell it, get out as fast as I can. Or they see the stock market crashing, well, they're going to start selling too. It's the same kind of thing. Whereas like, if you're investing in a good company, if you know the fundamentals behind Bitcoin, you're going to keep your money all on that stuff. So but unfortunately, I do have to go, fellas.
Do you have time for one
Thank
more?
you so
One
much.
more quick one.
Sure, let's just do it.
Meetups and or conferences or anything like that. Because every Bitcoiner I've met, I'm 99%. How's that? Are just, it feels like we're family. It feels like a family reunion. I went down to the Pacific Bitcoin conference. It felt like family. Our local Patrick and the local Patrick feels like a long lost cousin that I've had for years and years. Anyway, what do you have anything going on there? And have you been to conferences? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so I went to Bitcoin Miami and BitBlock Boom last year. I'm going to be at Sats By this year at South by Southwest. I'll actually be doing a live thing from Pleb Lab every single day down there.
Sweet.
I'm going to be going to. Basically my goal this year is to go to a bunch of different conferences.
Oh, I love it.
So I can't stress this enough for people. It's not only just getting to meet people, like-minded individuals, but it's like a networking thing.
Absolutely.
It's more fun to me than like I've been to some networking events for work. People are just kind of like not really liking their job. They're not super passionate. Everybody in the Bitcoin space that's showing up to these meetups is passionate. Everybody that's going to these conferences paid a lot of money to be there. And is wanting to be there and go talk. Maybe they're doing even LobbyCon, but it's the other thing too, is like you have access to some of the most brilliant minds in the space, not only in Bitcoin, but that I've ever talked to.
Yep.
And I've been lucky enough with my channel to talk to a lot of great hedge fund managers that are managing billions of dollars. And some of them go toe to toe with some of these, top minded Bitcoiners. They're all at these conferences. They're all super open and they're willing to talk to you as the average pleb. They're, willing to kind of, just break it all down or just sit and have a beer and just be buddy with you. We're all human at the end of the day.
Yep.
We all kind of know where I guess your stands and your morals are just from kind of being involved in Bitcoin. And I think that adds some level of comfortability with everything. So I think, at the end of the day, when you meet a Bitcoiner, even if you're not even working in the Bitcoin space or doing anything like that, they're looking to try to help you out and try to, prop you up and do something along those lines. So for those listening, I highly, highly encourage doing at least your local meetup. Those are normally free. So
yes,
at least go to that and network with people in your town. But if you can make it to a conference or two, definitely do that.
100%. Hit us up with your contact info again for both of yours. Go ahead and throw your personal one in there too, because that's cool. Go ahead and
yeah, for sure. So Twitter, Green Candle IT for all the Bitcoin stuff, all that stuff. Personal B Keys 1010. For all my shit posting and other stuff. State of Bitcoin podcast, Macro Insights podcast, and then I do write a newsletter as well. The link trees are in my bio. But subscribe to my YouTube. I'm really trying to blow that up. So if you could find Green Candle on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, join the live streams and the chats to entertain the guests, maybe heckle me a little bit. Talk about my bad haircut or something along those lines. I don't mind, but yeah, come make it interactive with me. And yeah, fellas, thanks for having me on. I'm sorry I had to put this hard stop on. But
thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you in the interwebs and hopefully at a conference in the near future.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. We definitely appreciate it. Patrick and I are going to hang out. So thanks again, Brandon. And we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to y'all soon. See ya.
What do you think about that guy, huh? He's a Bitcoiner.
He was energetic. Yeah,
he
was cool. It's a very typical story, right?
Yes,
I
the
got into Bitcoin and I didn't differentiate it. It was just one of the cryptocurrencies on the exchange and I was trying to make money. And then you start doing a little bit of research, and you realize what the government is doing, and then, the key words that he was talking about, were freedom and responsibility. He had a
Yep.
very, very, low time preference. And so digging into Bitcoin really is a growing experience,
Mhm.
makes you think differently. It changes people. And I've
Agree.
seen that enough where it's definitely a pattern.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. For me, it's kind of been a window to the soul, or maybe a good mirror to reflect. I think sometimes people give it too much credit when all it is just a, open source software. It's ridiculous. But one of the things that it does, it's like truth serum. And
Mhm.
so with that mirror, it gives you the opportunity to see what you need to change, and it's still you changing yourself. It's not, Bitcoin doesn't magically fix things. It's actually you. And if Bitcoin is a tool that helps change humanity, it's not because of Bitcoin, it's because humanity chose to change. I mean, maybe this is the psychologist in me coming out, because these are things we used to hear about in psychology, like the old joke of how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Have you heard this one?
Right. I have, but
Yeah,
but
so
how many? How many does it take to change a light bulb?
just one, but the light bulb has to want to change.
It still makes me laugh.
Right. So I really think it's a tool, and it's a multi-purpose tool, because we always, like I said, we get American centric or whatever, where we just, put the binders on here and then look at our local little world of the US, but it's
I think it's like I think you said it was a window,
Mhm.
and maybe a spotlight would
Yeah,
be how I would think of it,
I like that.
and by Bitcoin has shined this light, the spotlight on these things that I was maybe a little bit aware of, but
Yeah.
certainly didn't really pay very close attention to, and so those things have always been there.
Yep.
Bitcoin didn't cause them to appear.
Hmm.
Bitcoin for me caused those things to become visible and to make it into my conscience.
That's a great analogy. I like that, because when you shed light on things too, it drives the darkness away. And for me, like, I'm down the road of, like, it flicked the switch of, like, self-discovery too, because I was, raised in church, and so, like, I always believed in, God, and believed in, a world that I now just call an invisible world. Back then it was spiritual, but I've kind of modified my own faith and my own beliefs on things. But I think some of the time we as humans really have a problem communicating more than anything, because we trigger at the words like God, or things like this, which is ridiculous, and we argue about how we all got here and what we're doing here, but in actuality we need to actually unite together. And I think Bitcoin has flipped a switch for me to help me go down this path again, to realize that, it to me, it's like there is good and there is evil in the world. And I think this can push us down towards the path of good more, where we actually do want what is in the best interest of humanity, versus the best interest of the few. And I think that, when we align incentives again, we can shift back to that place, because we've had our heads pumped full of, like, oh, being self-centered will make you happy, and owning these things,
Mhm.
consumerism, and all this other BS. But in actuality, we really truly have more enjoyment in life through love and connections and all the stuff on the good side of this good evil continuum, if you will. And Bitcoin has helped, gently nudge me down this path of discovery,
Mhm.
and opening my mind to all these kinds of things, and whatnot. And it's kind of put me in touch with, why I first studied psychology, remembering things that because I was hardcore in church all the way from, early, just a kid, all the way through my 20s. So trying to make sense of all of this stuff, plus a whole bunch of shitty life choices and good life choices and everything in between, and trying to pull all that stuff together, so you're right. I don't want to get this all complicated and convoluted, but yeah, it's definitely been a tool. And
yeah, I don't remember where I heard the quote, but there was a preacher having a discussion with a non-believer guy, right? And so the preacher pretty much says, okay, so I'm telling you that there's heaven and hell, and you're going to go to one or the other, and if you live this life that I'm talking about, you get to go to heaven, otherwise you get to go to hell. Okay, so your choices are to believe me or not. Okay, and now if you believe me and you start living this life, I might be right or I might be wrong. Okay, what's the downside if I'm wrong? You've lived a meaningful, purposeful, love-filled life, that it makes for a better life, right? And if you choose not to believe me and I was right, then you're
right. How can just the act of believing what this guy says dictate the end thing? Yeah, this is
right. And so I look at that with Bitcoin and sovereignty and those sorts of things, right? And the community is very big on support your local ranchers, be sovereign, grow your own food, know where your stuff comes from, take responsibility for yourself.
Yeah.
And so even if everybody is wrong and you live that life, you're still getting the benefits of living that life, which is a very rewarding way of living.
For sure. Yeah.
So that's the downside. You get this great life, and you learn these things, and okay, so it didn't turn out the way we thought, but I had a pretty good life nonetheless.
Yeah.
I love the Bitcoin community.
Yeah, me too.
As I started to get involved in Twitter and start following some of these other folks, you hear a lot of good, uplifting messages. You hear a lot of trash talk and stuff too, but in general, very, very supportive, friendly.
I agree.
Good folks.
Yeah, and I'm kind of with Brandon, and I really appreciate his ability to also stand against the crowd. Because he was, talking like, I don't like labels, but when we get too cult-like, I think that's a red flag. So it's like, eat some damn dessert and just whatever. Just, don't be a pig, but don't go crazy either. This is, I don't want you to be like, oh, if I'm not a Bitcoiner, if I don't eat meat and don't work out and don't do all these things. That's not what it's about. It's more about like, hey, on this, like when I really, I don't even like just splashing out all the rhetoric when I fell down the rabbit hole. So when I really sought out Bitcoin and really educated myself on it, it sent me on this journey of self-discovery. And I realized that, if I live doing these things, my life is benefited greatly. Like that's more of the message that should be. You don't have to do this, but I believe if you, and Todd Taylor, the guy I talked to before this, and Brandon kind of picked on the same thing, which is, what thread is it? What is it that will get that person's interest? Because Bitcoin does have so many of these use cases and whatnot. And when you start pulling on that thread, it starts you on this journey of like, hey, nobody's lying to me right now, because I know that a lot of people in churches lie to me. I know that a lot of government entities lie to me. I know that businesses lie to me. I know that a lot of other human beings, but hey, I have this truth, and with that solid foundation, I can begin this journey. And it's been amazing. And it'll lead you to a place where it's like, wow, I want to eat right. I want to feel healthy. I want to have great relationships with people that are have strong morals like I have. And, I know they can rely on them and they can rely on me and whatnot. So I think it's more of just a tool of, self-discovery and whatnot. Things like, hey, sorry.
Oh, hey.
My internet decided to go bye-bye on me. So
yeah, I was wondering if it was you or me.
No, I saw it popped up on my screen like your internet is unstable. So I think it's a sign from God we were just talking about.
Time to call to an end.
Yeah. So, thanks, man. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoy all these conversations, and I feel bad because I'm like, oh shit, I think I've been just hogging the microphone all the time. So
Yeah,
sorry
you
about
did
that. But
pretty well letting Brendan, tell his story.
Yeah.